massive suspected oil spill has been detected near Iran's critical Kharg Island, the hub that handles nearly 90% of Tehran's oil exports. Satellite imagery now shows a huge slick spread across the Gulf, raising fresh questions over the cost of the escalating US-Iran conflict and the strain on global energy supplies. Here's a report.
The threat of an oil spill is looming large across Iran's main oil export hub, the Kharg Island. Satellite images captured between May 6th and May 8th by Europe's Copernicus program show a massive grey and white slick spreading through the waters west of the island. Experts analyzing the imagery say the pattern is visually consistent with an oil spill. Researchers estimate the slick may cover an area of around 45 square kilometers, making it potentially the biggest such incident since the start of the US-Israel war against Iran. The source of the leak remains unclear. Analysts say there is currently no direct evidence showing an active spill or confirming exactly where the oil originated from. But the location of the incident has drawn global attention. Kharg Island is the backbone of Iran's oil trade, handling about 90% of the country's exports, much of it heading to China. The suspected spill comes as the Gulf remains on edge. The US Navy has been enforcing a blockade around Iranian ports in an attempt to restrict tanker movement, while direct clashes between US and Iranian forces continue in the region. The conflict has already disrupted global energy flows, stranding hundreds of ships in the Gulf and triggering one of the biggest shocks to crude oil and LNG supplies in recent years. Now, with a possible major oil spill emerging near Iran's most vital energy hub, fears are growing over both the environmental damage and the deepening instability in the world's most critical oil corridor. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Mr. Chris Doyle is the Director of Council for Arab-British Understanding and the current lead spokesperson for the Council. He's now joining us live on this broadcast. Mr. Doyle, it's good to see you. Thank you very much for your time. If this oil spill is confirmed by Iran or the United States, we do not know the origins of this oil spill. We also don't know how it happened in Kharg Island. But if it is confirmed that indeed this is an oil spill, what could be the repercussions of that?
Well, if confirmed, it will just add to the fears about the environmental consequences of this war, that it will certainly have an impact on the delicate ecosystems in the Gulf. It's no doubt going to be the case also, once all the analysis is done, with the various attacks on oil tankers that have taken place and other oil and gas terminals, that the pollution as a result of this war will be really significant. And I think that's, really tragic. It's going to be one of the long-term costs of this conflict. The Gulf has seen oil spills before in 1991 from Iraq, actually. As part of that war, Iraq unloaded millions and millions of barrels of oil into the Gulf. So that was a devastating moment for the ecosystem that took years to recover from. So I hope that this is a spill that can be contained. I hope that, whatever has been leaking, maybe that has been somehow stopped. But it just goes to show that war is really costly, and we are perhaps lucky not to have seen an oil spill of this sort of size so far, if this is confirmed.
Mr. Doyle, let's move and talk about China now, because it looks like it's the focal point this week and this month, because President Trump is heading there. But before that, the Foreign Minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, was in China. What role can China play at this juncture?
Hopefully China can play a really positive role, because it has a vested interest. It would certainly like to see the end of these blockades, the end of the war. Iran is an ally of China. It certainly doesn't want to see further US-Israeli bombing of it, which would even further degrade the Iranian economy, its ability to maintain any form of defense. And of course, perhaps above all, that China gets so much of its oil and gas from the Gulf. It needs stability. It needs to be able to lower costs itself. Now, the question is really whether President Trump is willing to allow China to really be seen as the brokers of a deal. Now, it looks as if the Trump administration is basically moving towards some form of deal. It's diluted its position. There's now talk about a memorandum of understanding that could be put in place that could allow for those straits to be opened up. That's all very positive. And it's also just conceivable that a President Trump, in visiting President Xi, could announce with the second most powerful man in the world, as he would see it, a deal that would end this war. And to that extent, in the way that Trump likes to do deals with powerful, largely male leaders, he may well want to do this with President Xi.
Mr. Doyle, finally, the Gulf countries are in limbo. I'm talking about the UAE, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia, and now Bahrain, because Iran has warned Bahrain that they risk being targeted because of aligning with the United States. How should they act or behave in the coming days now that there's a ceasefire and there's President Trump heading to China, maybe a possible deal in the end? But how should these countries, especially in the Gulf, behave right now?
They have differing views. So there are more hawkish states. That's principally led by the United Arab Emirates, which has been hit hardest by the Iranian strikes during the active part of this war. Bahrain is historically suspicious of Iranian intentions, and it too is fairly hawkish. But other countries, Oman, for example, is very much one. It was the mediating power that would like to see a resolution of this. But so did also Qatar and Kuwait. Saudi Arabia, that was hit, of course, has probably suffered less than some of the smaller states. It too has tried to push a line of a negotiated deal over this. It's backed Pakistan in its role as a mediator. So I think overall the Gulf states would like to see the end of this, but they're by no means united. I think the question is, if there is some sort of deal, how do they guarantee their security going forward? Because the United States has demonstrated that it may not always be that reliable security umbrella that they require. The European Union is perhaps willing but not capable, and they're going to have to work for their own security. I think they're going to have to collaborate, cooperate more with each other to act as a deterrent against Iran or any other power that might threaten their stability. And of course, stability is absolutely crucial for states like the UAE and Qatar, because this is what allows them to act as global transport hubs, to where businesses can set up offices and do so much of their trade. So there is very much to play for these states, because they've got to reassure the global financial communities that they can resume business as usual as quickly as possible should this war come to an end.
Mr. Chris Doyle, it's good to see you as always. Thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.